Oscar, do you want to unmute?
Maybe he stepped away from the desk.
He might have stepped away, but when he comes back on, there is a vacancy in the Rio Rancho City Council. The mayor is seeking applicants for an appointment. So we need to recruit somebody here pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, well, hopefully, oh, let me see, I got somebody else that's waiting. Okay, hopefully he'll join us again here shortly. So we're coming down the home stretch. Everybody's working really, really hard. And so what we wanted to do is have someone come and cheer us on as we work really, really hard towards the, towards the end on November 3rd. And so that's why we've invited Brian Colon, who's been our state auditor since 2019. And I think he needs no other introduction. He's always been, also been our leader in the Democratic Party of New Mexico. And what's impressed me about Brian is he's joined a lot of our calls and given us a lot of support here. So I think on behalf of all of us, we really appreciate, Brian, your support and, on what we're doing here and throughout the state. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, John, for your leadership. It is great to be back with the Sandoval County Democrats. And I am just thrilled to be here. It has been a phenomenal day so far. Can you hear me okay? I'm getting some feedback, and I'm not sure if it's because someone's not muted. How are we doing on sound? Nancy, thumbs up, thumbs down? Okay, the feedback is gone now. Thank you so much. Great to hear from the candidates as always. And the reason I try to be with you as often as I can is because John and the team do a phenomenal job of communicating. So thank you to Joey earlier for actually giving a shout out for the team on communications and outreach and virtual connections. I feel so connected to the Sandoval County Democratic Party for so many reasons, but the least of which is not because you are great communicators. So congratulations on that. I stay in touch with all 33 counties. Today is day number 649 of awesome in the office of the state auditor. I have been thrilled to serve you every single day in that office. And I count them because I try to take every day with a heart of gratitude and never take a day for granted. This privilege I have to serve you is one that I don't take lightly. I was asked to keynote this morning and kind of charge you up, and I'm thrilled to do that, but I want to make sure that you remember why I'm always so excited to be with you and why I am always energized to do the work that we get to do, which is advance democratic values in the work of our daily lives. And that is because, Aleli during COVID-19, like every household in America, I think, was cleaning out the garage. And in that garage, she found a clipping that my mom had, God rest her soul. I've lost my parents long ago, but back in about 1984 or so, there was an article written where I was featured. And the reporter, as reporters often do when they interview young teenagers, said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said very candidly and maybe very ambitiously, I said, I want to be the first in my family to go to college. I want to get an accounting degree. I want to go to law school. And I want to serve the people of New Mexico that are giving me the opportunities to do those first few items. And as I am with you today on this beautiful Sábado Gigante, I get to tell you that 15-year-old, 35 years later, is living his dream. I was able to be the first in my family to graduate and go to college, although I buried my father as a teenager, so he never got to see it. But I graduated from New Mexico State University. Accounting was a little too hard, so I switched over to finance, but pretty close. I was able to go on to law school, and after 500,000 votes later, I am getting to try and repay the debt I owe my community, but I'll never be able to repay fully, but I'm going to die trying. I get to serve you as your state auditor. There are very few people that get to live and say they are living the dream of their childhood. So if you wonder where my energy comes from, if you wonder why I'm always so grateful and happy, it's because of that. You know, I try and bring Billy's energy to everything I do. I try and think about Alexandria always being at the table and Alexis leaning in, and the great candidates that come out of Sandoval County who inspire me, and the people that are just public servants who finally said yes to the call for public office. The people like your next clerk in Sandoval County, like Ann Brady Romero. I am inspired by Sandoval County's willingness to know that just because in the past, historically, Republicans may have run the table on us, it doesn't mean we quit fighting. It means we work harder, we stand taller, we don't give up. We show the tenacity that Democrats have shown for generation after generation to advance our values. You know, first they mock us, but then we win. And that's what's happening in Sandoval County. You are changing the tide. You are taking it from where it was to where it can be, to be a county that is a bastion for democratic values. A county that has not just Indigenous people in it, but helps lift up the voice of Indigenous people. Not just a county that has small communities that are rural New Mexico, but also gives a voice to rural New Mexico. A county that has great communities in it like Rio Rancho, but doesn't forget about its small, underrepresented populations. You're actually doing that every day. That's why I'm inspired to join you each month. That's why I make sure that I get on this call every month. And that's why I'm humbled and honored when your team reaches out to me and says, would you share a few words? Because I couldn't be more grateful for the work that goes on in this one of 33 important counties, but one that is always leaning in. That's Sandoval County. You lean in for the work. Oscar Solis is going to have to think long and hard, and then he's going to lean in and he's going to put in that application for the city council because we need his voice. I've known the Solis family for a lifetime, and I know they're fighters and they're champions for democratic values, and we need that voice. We need to no longer say that we will step back and allow others to lead that don't carry our values. We need you, Oscar. We need all the people that were on this call. We need President Biden. We need Vice President Harris to lead this nation out of these dark days, these days when we've had a failed leadership team at the helm. We need Ben Ray Lujan to go from being your congressman to being our United States Senator. It's about time now that we had a native New Mexican in the United States Senate. It's been a long time, folks, that we sent a new senator to the United States Senate that was a native New Mexican. We're going to do that with your congressman, our Assistant Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the highest post held by a New Mexican in the history of the United States of America. That's what Ben Ray was able to do in the House. What could he do in that club of 100? But you've allowed that leadership to be fostered. You have supported him on his 12 years of a journey that was been just remarkable. We're now going to send, thanks to the 3rd Congressional District, we're going to send an all-female, women of color congressional delegation from the land of enchantment, the 47th state, Tierra del Encanto, our New Mexico. 3 women of color, 100% to the House. That's how you make people feel like they have a voice in politics. Our elected officials represent the people of our state. How do you make sure that the country knows that New Mexico believes education's a priority? You elect a guy with a PhD to be lieutenant governor. How do you make sure that the people of this country know that New Mexico takes public health seriously? You elect an expert in public health to be our governor. That's what we've done. So whether 16 people show up on this call or 60 people show up on this call, John Maxwell always reminds me, he says that it doesn't matter whether you're talking to one person on your podcast or 1 million people on your podcast. There's a reason you're there. Your voice has got to be heard, touch a life, make a difference, and advance your values. That's what the Sandoval County Democratic Party has been doing for years. See, I was chair of the Democratic Party back in 2008. I had more hair and more weight. I'm glad I've lost one, not so much on the other. But I can tell you that I know the ebbs and flows that your county has experienced, and I look around the people on this Zoom call, and you've been there doing the hard work. And that's why on November 3rd, it's going to pay off. Let's not take our foot off the gas today, folks. We got to close the deal. We got to run through the tape. We got to run out that clock, and we got to be victorious. That election night party is going to be amazing. You got Jonathan Muniz. That guy volunteers for so many things. Are there two Jonathan Munizes? That's all I want to know. That guy is amazing, and he's all heart. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being a light on the political landscape of New Mexico. You really are a crucible for what makes New Mexico great. This multicultural population that we have, 2.1 million beautiful people. Our indigenous population is so well represented in Sandoval County. The people who step up and run, the people who actually do the work, we see them and we see you. And just know that when you're out there working, when you're making that next phone call, when Ann is calling for that next contribution, which, by the way, she's a lot better at that than you think. She sat here in my house for about 90 minutes, socially distant, masked up, making phone calls, and that authenticity, that heart, that community service that she's so passionate about for Sandoval County, it comes through on every one of those calls, and she did great. So look, you're the model for New Mexico. You're the model for tenacity. You're the model for what's going to be on November 3rd, which is Democratic victory up and down the ballot from the president to our judicial races. I'm grateful. My name is Brian Colon. I'm humbled to have served you for 649 days as your state auditor. Thank you very much, Sandoval County. Go get them.
Thanks, Brian. Does anybody have any questions for Brian?
Yeah. Happy to take questions. Hey, how do you like this mic? I figure it makes me look real sexy. You don't have to look at my crooked teeth. You don't have to, it's awesome. It's supposed to sound better. I don't know whether I do or don't, but at least in my mind, I sound better. I'm happy to take any questions you've got.
Mr. Auditor, I do not have a question. I just, I work for an agency with one of the providers. Ayudando was their representative payee. And that client, who has no family, no advocate for himself, doesn't know how to advocate for himself. He didn't have money. So our agency, who is his trusted to be his service provider, had to float him money until the U.S. Marshals and the new representative payee was temporarily assigned. So I followed that case because you have taken that battle head on to the people who are exploiting these individuals, and seeing all of this unfold with the Supreme Court orders and the oversight that you're exercising over these representative payees has been amazing, guys. So if you don't know this, he's taken that fight head on and is protecting the most vulnerable New Mexicans. And I think it's incredible. We've never had the Office of the State Auditor audit these people to protect these people's money. So thank you, Mr. Auditor.
Joey, that's very kind. Thank you. If I do anything not as well as I'd like to, it's communicating the work of my office does on a daily basis. We've got a great team of 30 civil servants who work hard every day, and people like Joey are gracious and generous. And I walk in a room, I get ready to give remarks, I get applause every day, but really the applause, there are civil servants in New Mexico that work hard every day. And they get out of bed in the morning and they go to work and they finish a hard day and they go home to their families, and the next day they do it again. And rarely, if ever, do they get the round of applause. Rarely, if ever, do they get the gratitude they deserve as civil servants. I suspect that when people like Scott and a couple others on this call were younger, you can recall when we celebrated civil servants. I'm a GS-18, I'm a this or that in government. And we really respected and appreciated our civil servants, whether they're with the Postal Service or they worked for the county or the city or the state. And unfortunately, in this climate, we don't do that anymore. And so I guess I would ask you to take some time to do that. In this next week, when you go to the post office, make sure you know that those postal workers hear from you and let them know that you give them applause and that you do value them. When you run into a county employee, know that they're the butt of the jokes, right? Shovel leaners, you know, our union sisters and brothers that are out there fighting for us and then working hard for us every day. Those civil servants never get the round of applause. And I just, I accept the gratitude, Joey, and I appreciate it. And I would ask you to continue doing that, but direct it to the everyday worker that works hard for New Mexico to move us forward, because they are living in uncertain times. They are not getting the service increases that they deserve. In my office, I've got a vacancy rate that would make your head explode, which means I've got a smaller team doing more work every day. I've got constitutional mandates of the work we have to do at the Office of the State Auditor and a budget that doesn't reflect the work that we're supposed to get done. So I have to lean harder on my team to make it happen, and they do. And rarely do they get the gratitude. I hope I give it to them, but I'm hoping the New Mexicans will too on occasion. So Joey, thank you for those kind words. And yes, we're fighting for that population that needs our advocacy, and I will continue to do that every day. And I just appreciate that. I appreciated Billy's comments about Mental Health Day. And this is, you know, Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I'm honored to be the MC for the Domestic Violence Resource Center in New Mexico for their big gala this week, virtually. It's Hispanic Heritage Month, where I feature on my Cafecito show every day at 9 a.m. on my Facebook page. We feature and lift up incredible New Mexicans who are telling our story. And we've got a lot to celebrate here. Let's do a better job of embracing that new slogan that Anne-Marie Hinton and a few others brought together, which is stop bagging and start bragging. We are a beautiful state with beautiful people with amazing potential. And let's start talking about it. Let's start celebrating it. And let's start living the lives we deserve and advocating for communities that have been on the margins for far too long. Thank you, Joey. Mr. Chairman. Oops, sorry,
Brian,
Nancy.
I am caffeinated and feeling kind of bold, so I'm going to ask you, what's your dream political job?
Ooh.
My dream political job is being able to get one vote more than any opponent that runs against me in any future election I ever decide to get into. No, look, I am really living my dream. What I can tell you what I don't want to do, and I'm on record pretty clearly, and I've said no several times, but if I can find a way to keep serving you on New Mexico soil, I'll do it until they put me 6 feet under. I mean, I really will. But I'm not going off to DC. Like you know, the governor could want to appoint me to the United States Senate, the Club of 100. And I know for sure that I would say that I'm so grateful and honored and humbled, but I would not do it. I just, every day of my life, I can assure you that they're all going to be right here in New Mexico. And you know, whether it's reelect or, you know, a lot of people are talking about the Attorney General's office. I'm talking about the Attorney General's office next cycle. And that's not much of a secret, and we're looking at that very closely. But I love serving you, John. I love serving all 2.1 million New Mexicans. I am living my dream. And yes, in politics, they tell you never talk about the future, and you know, just say, well, you know, I'm humbled to be asked and all that. You know, the problem with me is I'm a horrible liar, and I'm just pretty transparent. So yeah, if you ask me if I want to do this for a long time, yeah, I'm going to tell you the truth. I practiced law for 20 years, and I love that too. But I love this a hell of a lot more. I'm just being honest. Am I allowed to say hell?
Yeah.
Sorry. Thanks, John. Thank you. And this is being recorded. I just noticed that. My goodness. Bleep out my profanities, please.
Okay.
Any other questions? I'm all yours. And we didn't have as many speechifications before the keynote came on, so I know we have at least 2 or 3 more minutes if I need them. I'm happy. I love questions. Catherine, you got anything for me? Sonia?
I have a comment.
Alexandra?
Yes.
Alexandria, yes,
State
ma'am.
Auditor, when you were running for this position, your current position, you came to our ward meeting at the Estubone Library, and I had my son with me, and he was 17 years old, and there were 2 politicians in that room who found my son and walked up to him. And of course, one of them was you, and the other one was our wonderful, amazing governor. And my son will never forget that you two singled him out. And he voted with me. We got our absentee ballots and we sat down at the dining room table and voted con gusto. And then he said, "How's my friend doing?" And I said, "Your friend is great. I see him online all the time." So you are in our house, his friend. And I just want you to know that you really touched someone and made him interested in politics and what's going on in his world. And I know you do that every day. So thank you. You are a wonderful role model and a great inspiration.
Thank you, Alexandria. I don't think I knew he was your son at the time. I can tell you that I know when I took note, and I knew at what age I wanted to get involved, and it was because an elected official gave a speech that blew my mind about serving New Mexico. And I knew then that I had to get involved in politics and public service. And so if I can do that for just a few of the next generation, I will have lived a fulfilled life. And we have to do that for our young people, because unfortunately our young people turn on the TV and they see a presidential debate. Let me tell you, I met every single president of the United States for 36 years. From 1980 until 2016, I was like Forrest Gump of New Mexico. I met every president, all happy, this little redheaded, freckle-faced Puerto Rican Jew from New Mexico who goes to mass every Sunday. It's like, I understand what it is to not just see the political landscape, but to reach out and touch it. So if I can allow a young person to touch New Mexico's political landscape because I've been blessed to serve, I'm going to do that 10 out of 10 times. Because they need to know that there are people like me, people like you, Alexandria, who absolutely are at the table because we care and because we want to make a difference. Not because we want to bicker on TV, not because we want to be disrespectful to the American people with everything we do and say. We've got to show them there's another side of politics. And if I can do that for your son and for his friend, and what I hope you'll do is, will you send me an email with his contact information? And I promise you, I want to drop him a note in the mail and tell him I'm thinking about him and encourage him on his journey as he finishes up high school. And whatever I can do, I'm in his corner. And I want to remind him that I said that when I saw him. I told him I was in his corner, and I meant it then, and I mean it now.
Brian, this is Karen Schaefer. Would you be willing to to bring some of that passion and commitment to our election night party, make a guest appearance?
I already asked him.
Absolutely. And I saw that in the chat, and Alexandria threw me for a loop talking about her son. There's nothing those of you that know me well know that there's nothing I love to do more than interact with the next generation. I mentor countless young people, and so it's a huge passion point for me. So Alexandria threw me off my game, but I was going to say yes to the chat, and I'll say yes to you, Karen, and hello to Delbert. And I absolutely will do that. Just key me in. I think everybody on this call has my cell number, but if not, I'm going to put it in the chat. And Karen, you really recruited me. Karen sent me a private message. There's the pressure was on. I didn't realize, my goodness, a good thing I said yes. I didn't realize all this pressure was here. But yes, I'm happy to do that. Are you kidding? Of course. Thanks for asking. I'm honored.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Nancy, I have a question for Brian.
Go ahead.
Brian,
Yes, ma'am.
who delivered that speech that you just mentioned when you were younger that inspired you?
Brenda, thank you so much. Let me tell you about that origin. My two disabled parents, in order to kind of close the gap, they opened a little flea market down in Bosque Farms, New Mexico, 40 years ago, and I was 10 years old. And it's still there today. Of course, both my parents, my dad died when I was a teenager, and my mom not long thereafter, unfortunately. But they had that flea market, and all the politicos would come through the flea market. I mean, I remember Tony and Naya in some beat up RV pulling off the side of the road there on Highway 47 to get down and shake hands at the flea market, and everybody in between. But I will tell you that one of my mom's mentees was a village counselor. He was like the youngest village counselor at the time. His name was Scott Scanlon. And Scott Scanlon was one of my first political engagement points. And then it was Condi Cordova, whose campaign I worked on, and now judge, one of our judges down there in Valencia County, who sits there on the bench now, Pete Rael. Some of you know Pedro G. Rael from Valencia County. But the speech I was talking, so that was and I was about 10 or 12 years old. But Scott Scanlon took me to a political rally in Belen. And for those of you that are from Valencia County, you know all the big political rallies happen at the sheriff's posse. And I remember it like it was yesterday, no joke. All these years later, nearly 35, 40 years later, I went, ton of people, lots of folks shaking hands. And there was this very slight elder gentleman who got up on stage to give a speech. And I go to the sheriff's posse now, and when I was little, it seemed so much bigger. Now it's not as big, but the stage is still there. So he got up on that stage and he gave a speech, and then he introduced his son. And the little older gentleman, who had to seemed like in his, I guess I would guess now he was probably in his, I mean, it felt like he was in his 80s at the time. I thought he was like super, super old, but he's probably 60 something, right? And now that I'm 50, like 60 is young. Are you leaving, Oscar? Go fill out your application. He got up on stage, and that gentleman was the judge, the magistrate, but he was also the baker. He was Valencia County's baker. His name was Gil Sanchez. And he introduced his son, and his son got up and gave a speech that my hair is standing up on my arms right now, just thinking about that moment. But at that moment, my hair stood up on my arms, my hair on my head went on fire. And I actually back then looked like Howdy Doody. My hair was even more red. So imagine that, on fire. And he moved me nearly to tears with his passion and with his advocacy for people on the margins and for democratic values. And that man became the Speaker of the House, and his name was Raymond Sanchez. And I've never forgotten that speech that Raymond gave that day. I've forgotten what he said exactly, but as Maya and whoever originally coined the phrase, people will never forget. They may forget, you may forget what people said, but you'll never forget how they made you feel. I have never forgotten how Raymond Sanchez made me feel that day as a 13-year-old boy. He made me feel like I could live my dream. And in fact, he was right, because today I live my dream that Raymond Sanchez allowed me to believe I could at that time. Because I never forget, I turned to Scott Scanlon and I said, what does he do? And he said, that guy's a lawyer and he's a politician. And I said, I don't know exactly what the last part means, but I want to do both those things. And it wasn't long thereafter that I got interviewed, and I said I wanted to be the first in my family to go to college and be a lawyer. Like, that's amazing. Like Raymond Sanchez, I hadn't met a lawyer. I didn't know, I mean, my family didn't know from lawyers. Most families in New Mexico avoid lawyers. That's a bad thing. And so I didn't know that was a career that I could actually reach out and actually do. And I have, and I'm grateful. Thanks for asking me, Brenda.
Thank you, Brian.
That was a long answer to a short question. Qué bárbaro.
Any other questions? All right. Well, that pretty much wraps it up. We're coming down the home stretch, so everybody vote and volunteer, because we've got some great candidates. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for having me.